she's a warm one. Can I try to keep this one under a 20-day mark? And if this is not the most sherbety, ice creamy, soft serve, fun sweater you've ever seen, I don't know what is.
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast episode today. I am eager to chat about my knitting. It has been the weirdest few weeks. Thank you so much again for your understanding with the couple of weeks of missed videos, and then the video that went up last weekend at that point had been sitting there for a week. So I feel like we need to just catch up right now. And I do have a lot to catch you up on. There's really exciting things happening with my whips. I have a new cast on. We're going to hibernate a whip today. And I'm also just at a really, really exciting point with the journey of my ESO scarf. So I think without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on in. Before I get into everything else, briefly, what I'm wearing here is my Nomad sweater by Veronica Lindberg. This was knit out of Novita. Helene, the yarn and the pattern were gifted by Novita, and it's just like the perfect spring sweater. Admittedly, I'm not in love with it on top of the white t-shirt, but I think I'm going to be trying some things on today, so I just wanted to make sure I had that on. But otherwise, I've really just been loving this as a go-to throw-on spring sweater. So loving this at the moment still. And then let's talk about the ESO scarf very quickly. Thank you from the absolute bottom of my heart to everyone who applied for the test knit. At this point, I have reached out to the selected test knitters, but I do just want to say the biggest, most sincere thank you to everyone who applied to test knit it. Trust me when I tell you, choosing test knitters was like the most stressful thing I think I've ever done. It was very overwhelming, and that's why we're doing this process together. But thank you so much to everyone who applied, and for everyone who's just excited about this pattern. You are really helping me pursue this dream of mine to be a knitwear designer, and this is a really fun first step. So as you are seeing this video, the test knit will have just begun. So please wish me luck and send me some good vibes, because I know that Saturday me is going to be a little bit more stressed out than today me. But I did just want to say thank you so much. And on that note, I guess I could give you a quick update on one of my whips, which is an ESO scarf. You haven't seen this version in quite a few weeks. I've also not tracked the progress, how long these guys have been on the needles. But something kind of funny that had happened with this is I had weighed my yarn. So this scarf pattern is entirely based on your own gauge and amount of yarn. So there's a bit of weighing that you have to do. So I thought I was being clever, and I actually had caked up my yarn and then put that cake on a scale while winding it up yet again into a second cake. I was adding a slip knot to the yarn when I reached the like 40% of yarn point. At the beginning and at the end. So I had done 40 grams in the cake, slip knot, wound up another 20 grams, added a slip knot, and then there were the remaining 40 grams on the ball, because I knew I was going to be working on this without being near a skein. So I just figured I'll knit until I see one of those slip knots, and then I'll be able to pause and go back to the pattern and everything. Well, apparently the first slip knot must have come out at some point in the journey, because I did not knit 40 grams of yarn. I knit up a full 60 grams of yarn and then just kept going without thinking about it. And all of a sudden I was like, why is there no yarn left? And that was when I put it together that when I had weighed my center point, I had already knit through 60 grams. So I actually spent a good chunk of today ripping this out and getting it back onto my needles. So the point that you are seeing it at right now is that the increasing edge is done. You're actually looking at the back side of this, the wrong side of the fabric. here, let me turn it around. So the increasing edge is done. This is the cast on point. This is the center point, and I have literally just begun the decreases, so it will be mirrored just like that on the other side. So that's where I'm at with my little ESO scarf. I'm trying to get that done so that I'm trying to get that done while doing my final review of the draft of the pattern that I'm sending out to the testers. So I have been spending quite a bit of time on this, not just this scarf, but this project, the ESO scarf as a whole. Aside from that, I have very good news. A little update on my Jelly Top by May knits. Let me put her onto Helena for us. Here is my fabulous little Jelly Top by May knits. This has been on pause since, you guys know, I ran out of yarn, so I could not move on to the sleeves. But the crisis has been averted after what was actually a really difficult time of trying to get my hands on this yarn. This is the We Are Knitters Touch Me Mohair in the colorway Natural. So I feel incredibly lucky to have received a message from one of you who really kindly offered to send some yarn from her stash to help me complete this top. So Bridget from Bronxville, the yarn is now here. I can now complete this jelly top. And thank you so much for sending this and absolutely saving the day, saving the top. I can't wait to see this totally done. I do have one extra little detail idea after trying this on in the last podcast episode. So I decided to make mine quite long. I'm really enjoying the look of these longer tops, but then to compensate for that, I had done a split hem. After putting it on last, I felt like I really should have done that split hem, maybe even two of these roost sections back, just so that that was a little bit deeper of a cinch. But also, I was wondering if there was a world in which I was regretting making it as long as I had. And I just felt torn because I like the idea of it and I think it's going to be really great, but I know it's not going to go with everything that I have. So I had this kind of wild idea of what if I made a couple of strings, either with the We Are Knitters Touch Me Mohair, since I now have plenty to do that. I could make little tiny eye cords, or maybe just utilizing some ribbon or something. And if I utilized a crochet chain to just add a couple of loops on the inside of this like side seam, I'm trying to explain this as best I can. Almost like when you have a dress or something that has that little loop that you could like loop your bra strap into. I'm kind of picturing something like that in such a way that it creates two channels on the side seam, which I could then use either, like I said, a ribbon or that I cord to feed into the chain and make a U shape coming back down the other side. And that way, if I wanted to have the option to wear this as a little bit more of a crop top, I could actually cinch the sides up and have them kind of pulled up. I would have to absolutely see what this looks like because it's so possible that if I did that, it would just make all of this fabric so bunchy that it would look really ridiculous on the front. But I'm sure I could find a photo of those shirts or dresses that people make out in the world, usually out of a sort of like ribbed fabric, where they have these side cinching details, and it makes for a really cute and I think quite flattering way of wearing a top or a dress. So that's just something that I was considering after seeing this on the other day. But I also think that part of what's throwing me off here is the lack of sleeves and neckline. Once those are done, I do believe that this is going to look infinitely better than it does as this like sleeveless tunic with a ruffle collar. I don't know what's happening right now, but I'm just eternally grateful to you, Bridget, for getting this yarn to me and gifting it to me too. Just very generous. I'm very appreciative. And for saving the day with my jelly top that I'm feeling so passionate about finishing. So it's been a wild week with the ESO scarf just admin stuff. I wanted to pick up the sleeves this week. In fact, I was kind of trying to get this done for a photo shoot that I have for work next week, but I don't think that that's feasible. So, at the very least, I'm going to try to get the sleeves picked up and be able to work on them throughout the weekend. So, that's where we're at with our jelly top. Stay saved by Bridget. And good thing, because she's been on the needles for 112 days today. Yikes. Next project I'm going to chat about is my Artemisia Sweater by Emma Mayer, which I'm knitting by holding 2 strands of Knit Picks Bubbly Boucle together. And then the collar, cuffs, hem are all being knit out of Knit Picks palettes held together in the colorways. The Bubbly Boucle is Poppin' Candy and the palette is Cosmopolitan. Super fun, bright pink. It's looking like a mess right now because I am actively seaming the bottom edge of this. So I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this, but basically for the collar, the cuffs, everything here, you are making these folded hems. So you're just kind of knitting twice the length that you want. And in this case, seaming it down by picking up live stitches off of the needle and working them into the fabric where you're sewing it down to. It's taking quite a bit of time, and I can't remember it taking quite that long when I had done it for my original Artemisia, but do bear in mind that if you are working on this sweater, this is not just going to be a 1, 2, 3 easy peasy bind off of the hem. I thought I'd be able to get this done with my morning coffee, which is like pretty typical if I have a bind off. I think, oh, I could just sit down with my coffee. I'm sure I could get this done while I'm sipping on that. And I think that turned into a maybe an hour and a half excursion of me seaming this down, and I'll tell you, it looks perfect. I've been really taking my time to get the details just right on this sweater, and so it's well worth the time, but as it stands, I have completed, my goodness, I would call it about a third of the hem. So that's kind of what's going on here. If things are looking wonky, it's also inside out. So let me just hold this up for you. So since you saw it last, not much has changed except for the fact that everything is done with the boucle. And I was really trying to use up every little scrap of boucle that I had. I'm trying to find the ball. This is what I have left over. It's not a ton. It's definitely more than I was really trying to just knit this until the boucle was gone, but it would have wound up being kind of silly long on me. And so I did stop short. I'm sure I could make a little accessory of sorts with this. So overall, I did a good job of using up the boucle. So I had finished knitting the boucle on the sleeves. I think when I showed it to you last, they were looking just a little bit too short. So I went back and added the length I needed there and then just put those on hold before the cuffs need to be done so that I could burn out a good bit of the boucle on the body. And I was just trying this on every few rows because that boucle really does add up. You're adding an inch with every 4 or 5 rows. So I was trying this on quite frequently, and I was aiming for a length that felt very sweatshirty and comfy. I think I'm realizing now the sweater I have on is also quite long, and then the jelly top is quite long. I love a cropped sweater. I get an abundance of wear out of the ones that I have. I think the thing is that most of the sweaters I've knit so far have been more cropped, so it is nice just to have these longer options, but especially because I intend for this to be more of a casual throw-on sweatshirt. I just like the idea of it being extra oversized, comfy, cozy in the length. So knit with the boucle down to the length about an inch before I thought was good so that I could then get started on the hem. So I just have to finish seaming that down and then knit the cuffs in the same exact way. And then this guy will be ready to block. Now, going back to my idea of adding floral embroidery onto this, it seems like most of you are all for this idea, and I'm really happy you are. The only thing I'm afraid of is I don't know if I'm going to have enough yarn in the Knit Picks palette to embroider the flowers, and that's really the only way I'm going to want to do it. These are the two balls that I am using. They're the only ones that I have. Now, I'm going to knit the first half of the cuffs and just see kind of where that leaves me. If I feel like there's still plenty there to be able to do at least I don't know, 7 embroidered flowers, which I don't even know how much yarn that would take. Like, I'm kind of just doing this all based off vibes. If it seems like I'd have enough, then I could always switch to a different color on the inside of the cuff since they are folded. And I actually had done that on my last Artemisia sweater. I didn't have enough of one yarn to do both the outside and the inside in the same one that I really wanted to see. So I had just done a combination. I could do that here on those cuffs, and I do actually have Knit Picks palette in just a lighter pink, so that could be kind of fun to have that pop. But I'm also thinking that if I am doing that for the sake of adding embroidered flowers, it might be a lot to have a pop of light pink on the inside of the cuffs and embroidered flowers. So you almost feel like I would have to choose. So I might do a little deep dive into Ravelry tonight and see if anyone has some of this Cosmopolitan Knit Picks palette in their stash that they'd be willing to sell. And maybe if I could get my hands on an extra ball of it, I'll commit to the flowers. Regardless, the goal is to finish this garment and get it blocked and be able to wear it. And then just when I have a day to embroider flowers, we'll do it then if we do it at all. So that's what's going on with the Artemisia. I have full confidence that this will be done and on my body for the next podcast episode. So that is my Artemisia sweater. It's been on my needles for 70 days today. You're really going to want to stick around for my new cast on and for the progress that's insane that has been made on my Clematis sweater. But before we get into that, let me touch upon my Lanark sweater by Here we have a completed back panel on the Half Fisherman's Rib version of the Lanark by Rebecca Clow. I've been knitting mine out of Holsgarn Super Soft, held with Nano Stitch Labs. Oh, what is it called? Mega Mohair or something like that. I know that the info is on the screen here, but I'm so happy to report that this back panel is done, and the next step is going to be picking up the shoulder seam for the front. That being said, this is the project that I'm going to put into hibernation today. I don't know that I've ever officially done that before, but my thought process here is that this mohair wool sweater is quite robust. She's a warm one, and there's just zero chance I'll be reaching for this throughout the summer. So I made the conscious decision to get to this really good place to hit pause and cast on a different project that I think would be more appropriate for wearing in the summer. And then I'm actually going to set an alarm on my phone so that around the beginning of August, I can get this back onto my needles so that it is done for the fall, because I'm extremely eager to have this as a finished object. And before I just tuck her away, I do want to say that you guys saw a very real look into a in the moment frustration point with this garment in the last podcast episode. I thought it was important to share that because I know that every maker in some capacity has experienced that moment when they felt like they were inadequate or that they didn't have the skills to persevere and get through something. And sometimes maybe that is just true. But other times, I don't think that we discuss often enough the idea that there are patterns out there that are going to work better for you than others. And like I said, then I'm extremely aware of this now as I'm writing a pattern in a way that works very well for me. And I understand going into it, it's not going to work very well for everybody, but it works really well for me, and that's important. So, while you saw my real time frustration with this last week, which was very real and very honest, and I felt really needed to be said, I know that most of you understood the message, but I do want to make it clear in case it wasn't that this pattern has clearly worked for hundreds of people. They're on Ravelry with finished projects. So, it's very obvious that this is a successful pattern. It's also very obvious that this designer is incredibly successful. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I admire a lot of what she does with her patterns. So, me saying that the way that this is written isn't jiving for me is just to say that and share it with you in case you're having the same experience with this pattern or any other pattern. So, that's just something I wanted to clarify. But based on the comments, I know that most of you felt like you were able to resonate with the perspective that I was coming from. So, right now, where this project stands for me is absolute pride that I was able to make it to the point it's at. And it's a good time for her to go take a nap because no way will you be finding this on my body in the middle of summer. So she's at a really good point. I have my notes written down. I'm going to pop her into a nice Tupperware container with the rest of her yarn, and we'll get back to her in August. So that's where we're leaving things for now with the Lanark sweater. I'm itching to show you my new cast on, but I'm gonna practice a little self-restraint because I'm also very excited to show you where my Clematis sweater is at. So this is another Emma Mayer design, same designer as my Artemisia sweater. And it is this really fabulous sweater that has the diagonal button band. So it kind of looks like a cardigan, but it doesn't exactly function as one. And I have made the vest version of this top. So this is kind of my second foray into the Clematis collection. Here we are. Speaking of mohair going into the summer, I'm trying to get this done for these last few 50 something degree days we're having in Connecticut. I've knit mine up with Knit Picks Palettes and Knit Picks Aloft. That's their mohair in this just most stunning green grassy. It has this glowy worm kind of quality to it that I'm loving. And I don't know if you could tell, but the body and everything is actually totally done here. All that I have left is the ribbing for the collar and the button band. So currently I'm just kind of holding the front together with these stitch markers, but I did take a little time yesterday to go through my now very organized button collection and just kind of see what I was thinking for buttons. I started to think I was going to go for this kind of eclectic button look. I've just been seeing this everywhere and I love the idea of it. My only thing is that I would love to do this with a true collection of little random buttons rather than going out and buying like different buttons, but I also want them all to go together very cohesively. So I had gone through all of my button collection and pulled what looked like it could maybe create this look. And when I laid it out onto the sweater, I didn't even bother to take a photo because I knew right away I was not going down that road. Maybe because this already has the visual interest of the diagonal button band. I don't know. There was something very busy about it and in a not great way. So I ditched that idea. Now this sweater is meant to have maybe 5, 6 buttons on it. So I've boiled this down to a couple options that I would love your input on. Number one is these shell buttons in that amount-ish that Emma states in the pattern to put on. They're just little, I mean, my typical little mother of pearl shell buttons. The other option I have are my little brass nub buttons, which I love so much. And same deal, just to put like 5 or 6 of them on there, whatever feels the most appropriate. But then I was liking the look on that more eclectic button option of the absolute surplus of buttons. And so I decided to lay those 2 button options out since I do have quite a few of them in these like plentiful quantities. and I took some pictures. I'd like to know what you think. I don't necessarily need to go with like this amount of buttons. I just kind of grabbed a handful and laid them out to see what I thought about the abundance of buttons. Right now, my gut is telling me to either go with just the like 5 or 6 little brass nub buttons or with the plentiful shell button look. So I'd love to know what you think of those 4 options, and we'll see what we wind up with. But otherwise, this guy's done. Let me just pop it on real quick so you could see how it's fitting. Obviously, once this is blocked, it's going to be a little bit looser fitting, but I didn't want an oversized sweater. So I'm thrilled with the fit here. Obviously, the color is like my favorite thing about this, and I'm also obsessed with this Knit Pixel Loft Mohair. It's gorgeous. Now, I don't think that I had gotten to the sleeves when I saw you last. So this is kind of a drop shoulder style sweater, but it's not the most severe drop shoulder. It's just kind of a casual kind of t-shirt shoulder. But you do wind up working some short rows in the sleeve as if it is a set-in sleeve. And I think it just makes for the perfect fit because you don't get that abundance of fabric under the arm here. And I am just in love with how this is turning out. I really was craving a green sweater, and this is absolutely scratching that itch for me. So you can see here that I still need to add the neckline that's going to pull this neck in just a little bit, and then adding the button band will be the finishing touch. So yeah, what do we think? Brass or shell? Lots or a few? You let me know, and I think I could say with confidence this one will also be done by the next podcast episode. It'll be a battle to see which one I wear, and can I get this done and still have a day to wear it? At the very least, this versus the Lanark is a lot lighter and airier. That sweater being the half fisherman's rib, it's quite a thick fabric, and being the whole scarf and super soft, it's like quite rustic. This is feeling so soft and lightweight and airy. I just love the feel of this sweater, and it's looking so cute. She has been on my needles for just 16 days today. Can I try to keep this one under a 20-day mark? That'll be my goal now. I absolutely love her. And now for the most exciting cast on. This is a sweater that I have been nonstop thinking about since I very first saw the stitch pattern tees. I wanted to apply to test it, but I missed that window. And over the test period time, I was watching everyone else's versions pop up, and I started thinking about the yarn I would use. And I thought, it's a sweater, but we're coming into the summer, and I love my Salty Day sweater so much, and that's in cotton. So maybe it would be kind of cool to knit this in cotton. It would definitely be unexpected, but also a white cotton sweater feels a little bit basic. And then not too long ago, I had made that little baby sweater with the white cotton and the lace weight strand of merino running through it that had the color changing pastel situation. And I loved that fabric, and I have quite a bit of that. And I have quite a bit of white cotton in my stash. And so it was decided. I cast this project on just over a week ago now, and that is my Knitonomy Laurel Sweater by Magdalena Parker, Miss Knitonomy, the queen of cables. And it's basically this like cable within a cable drop shoulder sweater. You might remember my pearl sweater that I knit last year, also Magdalena Parker. I'm a big fan of knit a lot of her designs. And if you are a lover of cables like myself, then you're gonna have to check this out. It's just too good. So let me see if you can identify the color change without me really pointing it out to you yet, and I'll just show you kind of where we're at so far. I hope you can see just how pretty this is. So this is the back panel of the drop shoulder sweater. I have worked through all of my like shaping increases, and now I am literally have just started working the like back and forth for the armhole depth. I am knitting mine slightly off gauge. So I'm knitting this up on 5 millimeter needles. I want to say that the pattern calls for 4.5 millimeter needles. My gauge is pretty tight. I'm also using cotton, so that's kind of a bold move for this kind of sweater. But I'll tell you what, this fabric is feeling so squishy and luxurious. And I just have to imagine it's going to be this like stylish sweatshirt that I'm going to get to throw on with some jeans on a chillier day. I think this with just jean shorts is going to be very, very cute this summer and this fall. Yeah, I'm so excited. I am of course using the KNC Essential Cotton, and I think this color is actually called Cream. But it's just 100% cotton. I bought that yarn in the Joann's going out of sales, going out of business sales. And then the lace weight strand of merino, I think it's called like Jojo Land, something like that. I picked up a few balls of that at Webb's, America's Yarn Store. Gosh, sometime last year, and just didn't realize kind of how much I had bought because it is lace weight, but it was on sale. So when I saw that I would have enough to knit this sweater with it, I just thought, you know what? I don't really need a white cotton sweater. Let's add a little whimsy to it, and I think it's perfect. In certain lighting, you almost can't see it at all. But then out in sunlight, especially if you could kind of get it so that the sun is coming through the fabric, it starts to look very watercolor, like just stained, like the softest, most discreet tie-dye ever, like an ice dye situation. It's just so pretty. So if you can't see it, I'll even hold it over here so maybe I can manipulate the lighting a little bit to make it more clear. But it did start with this kind of yellowy color, then goes into a green, and then the blue is probably the most kind of pungent color there is, which then fades back into like just the softest light purple, and then we're quickly back into pink, yellow, and it's starting to repeat again. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to play this with yarn management as far as when I get to the front, will I try to start in like the same place so that it's all kind of cohesive? I haven't thought too much about it yet. I just had cast this on and I've been absolutely loving it. The cables are so much fun. It's so engaging to have not only the big cable twists happening here and here and here, but also these little unicorn cables just running through. And if this is not the most sherbety, ice creamy, soft serve, fun sweater you've ever seen, I don't know what is. OC agrees, right, OC? So this has been declared my outside knitting project. Anytime I've had the opportunity to sit out in the nice weather the past week, I've been taking this one outside with me, and I've kind of said I can only work on it if I'm sitting outside, which means it's not getting work done today because it's an absolutely dreadfully gloomy day. um, but I do think that when this is done, it's going to be quite heavy since it is cotton, but I think it'll be cozy heavy, not like dreadfully heavy. Or not. I don't know. To be honest, I'm just enjoying it, so I don't even care at this point. But yeah, that's my Autonomy Laurel sweater that's been on my needles for about 8 days today. And and I'm loving it. I think I said, but I'm knitting it in the size 4, which I think is going to get me something between the size 4 and the size 5. I know my gauge was a little off. I had done a gauge swatch, but I'm close to gauge, just not quite. But I think it looks great. It's looking like a good size. Hooray. That's my Autonomy Laurel sweater. Hello. You sleeping? You just drink a bunch of water. You got your cozy sweater on today. It's really, really gloomy here in Connecticut, and we just shaved OC because it was so hot just a few days ago. But now she's chilly, so she needs her sweater. Anyway, so to recap, what it's looking like right now is we're going to have a finished clematis and a finished artemisia in the next podcast. Hopefully, a finished ESO scarf. The Lanark is going into hibernation for this summer, and we'll be continuing the journey on my anatomy laurel sweater, as well as getting those sleeves done on my jelly top. Kind of sounds like a lot, but we're also in one of those stages where I don't have anything to just grab and sit down and knit on. The clematis, like I have to pick up stitches on the clematis, on the jelly top. The artemisia, I'm seaming this thing down, and then I'll be able to just knit in the round for the cuffs. I'll probably do that while watching some soccer later. But I do feel that I need something that I could just pick up and knit on, because everything else is a little chaotic. But I'll try to get some things off the needles first. So that's everything I have for you today. I'd love to know what it is that you're working on. Thank you again to everyone who applied for the ESO Scarf Test Knit. I can't wait to start seeing other people's versions pop up. And I think that's everything for me today. If you enjoyed this video, you can let me know by giving it a thumbs up. And if you subscribe and ring the bell, then you'll be notified anytime I post a new video. However, you can usually expect Saturday morning upload at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And with that, a big ol' thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, you guys. Bye.